an empowered woman is someone who's kinder to herself, as kind as she is to other people, and also recognizes her own worth. You know, that saying that like, I see further because I stand on the shoulders of giants. I want people to stand on my shoulders and go do it bigger and better, because we need to have an impact in this world.
Welcome to the Empowered Woman Podcast, the #1 show on visibility strategies for women entrepreneurs. If you want to get empowered to be seen, stand out on social media, stages, TV, and more to make an impact with your voice and business, you're in the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Spurk, and I'm your host, professional singer and visibility strategist. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode. One thing I don't talk about enough is the impact podcasting has had on my professional life and how it opened so many doors for me. So if you want to start a podcast or you want to level up your current one, then you need to work with my podcast strategist, Juliana Barbati. She owns a podcast marketing and production agency, and her team takes care of everything from editing and optimizing to scheduling for you, making this process a breeze for you. She's seriously the best. All her info is in the show notes. You can go to julianabarbati.com and tell her I sent you. Hi, Christy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Marta. I'm happy to be here.
Yay. So why don't you get us started telling us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm Christy Pretzinger, and I am the CEO of WG Content, Strategy and Creation, formerly WriterGirl. We work primarily right now in the healthcare space, doing all sorts of content strategy and content creation. And I've been doing that since about 2005.
Wow. That's amazing. It's been a while. So you have several stories and several nuggets of wisdom to share with us, I'm sure. How did you get started in this space, and has the focus always been health?
I started a long time ago, probably before you were born, Marta, as a freelance writer. So I am virtually unemployable. I had to create a business that would keep me on. So in 2005, I started building WriterGirl from basically, it was freelance writing business into the multi-million-dollar company that it is today. And what happened was, in a nutshell, is I had a former client. I'd been around already as a freelancer, and I had a former client reach out to me and ask me to bring a team of writers to a large project. Mm-hmm. We did that. It was successful. Everybody made money, and it was great. So I thought, well, that's the niche. And then fast forward about, 6-9 months, another former client was now working in a hospital organization, and there were 3 websites launching concurrently. And so she asked me to handle those. And within about, 4 or 5 days, I had like 35 writers on the project, and I didn't know anything about hospitals or healthcare. So that was interesting. But after we finished that up, and I learned a whole lot very quickly, I thought I'll bring teams of writers to hospital projects. And then I told myself the entrepreneur's necessary lie, which is that will be easy. Because if you really thought about how hard everything is, you would never do anything.
Right.
Nobody in my own hometown would talk to me. So I went up to Columbus, Ohio, and spoke to a couple of places there, one of which was the Ohio State University. And they gave us some work right away, and they are still our client. That was back in about 2007, I believe it was, and they're still a client of ours. So that was one of our first big projects, and then started working regionally, and then went all over the country. And of course, now I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. Everybody here works with us as well. So just took some time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. As it usually is with starting your own business and getting a foot in the door and having to have those conversations. That's amazing. And with you having done this for so long, one of the questions that I have coming up is, with the surge of social media, especially throughout the last decade of more of companies leveraging more of the social media space to put content out there, how has that been in terms of the content creation? Because before, did you used to leverage more like press? Publication,
never.
It was ever always social media. Okay.
No, not even social media. We do not do that. Actually, We are not a social media content creator. We actually work in the healthcare ecosphere. So anybody who provides, you could be a payer, an insurance company, hospital, it could be an advertising agency that serves hospital clients. There's all sorts of areas in there. And what we specialize in is creating highly custom content. So the simplest way is some of the more basic things we do is interviewing, let's say, a neurosurgeon, conducting that interview, and then doing the alchemy of turning that into content that is understandable for a 5th to 8th grade reading level. So there's a lot of nuance there, which has helped us avoid being replaced by AI for the time being. Anyway, and so again, it's very highly custom. So we don't really get involved in social media other than blogs. We do blogs, but we don't do social media content.
Okay. Wow. That's very interesting because in my world, when we talk about content creation, because I'm so into the social media, that's what I think. So this is great to know. Obviously, there's other ways of creating content, and especially for companies that are leveraging other things other than social media. So that's the work that you do. And for anyone listening that maybe works in the health space, this is a great resource to get in touch with you and learning more about how you can turn that into very customizable content. I love that. So
we do work with them in terms of like strategy too, of saying, okay, you have all of this content. How can we leverage it for you? How can we repurpose it? We create animation, we do video scripting, we do podcast scripting. So it's all the stuff that's not social media, but all the things that maybe a lot of people don't think about that really do require more of a team approach as opposed to one person being a content creator. So it's a little bit of a different niche.
Yeah. And repurposing is so helpful because if you're an established business, you have content, but you at times don't have the eye for how can I repurpose this in different ways. So having someone with a strategic perspective really helps, and leveraging what you already have. It's not about creating something new. It's just repurposing what you already have, which I'm a firm believer in as well. So tell us more about some of the challenges. You alluded to that when you were first saying people didn't give me the time of day, so I had to go a different route and talk to different people. And we all know, well, we should know as entrepreneurs that networking is huge, and knocking on doors and just putting yourself out there. I love what you said. If you sit and think about how hard it's going to be, you're never going to do it. You can't focus on that.
I mean, when I was building WriterGirl, I was married. My husband at the time was a stay-at-home dad, and I had a child and was like, somebody's better make some money. So I was very busy, as probably anybody listening and building a business knows, that you wear all the hats.
Yep.
So you're the salesperson, and then you have to go back and operate, and then you have to do all the accounting, and you do everything. And so it can be a hamster wheel when you're first getting started. And I definitely experienced that for many years. But then what happened, and I'm very fortunate now, over the years, I work on the business and not in the business. And honestly, if you asked me about the day-to-day business, I couldn't answer the question. But what I did do is, and I highly recommend this to everyone, I always wanted to work myself out of a job. I wanted to work as little as possible and make as much money as possible. That was what I thought would be a great idea. And then you put your head down and you just start working, and you don't really know until all of a sudden you look up and you're like, wow, that actually kind of happened. But the way that happened for me was that I made sure that I hired people that were smarter than me. And I taught them how to do what I had done, and then said, now go do it better, because they're better at it than I am. The people that are in business development for my organization now are 100 times better than I could ever be. The person who is the chief operating officer of my organization is much more skilled she manages both sales and operations, is much more skilled at that than I would be. Certainly, my financial team has better financial acumen in many ways than I do. I have the vision for it, and I can ask the questions and say, I want to see this information, but I don't get into the weeds of those things. And that has been incredibly beneficial to me. And I think beneficial for them too, because I set them up for success. And one of the things I did when I hired my first salesperson, who's now been with us 13 years, was I had just landed our largest client. And it was a big, I think, $450,000 project, something like that. And she came on, and I gave her that project along with the commission, and she earned her way. She worked that account very well. But what that did is it set her up for success. It teed her up. And then I also never competed with her. Like, I wasn't continuing to sell and compete with her and try and take something from her. I was helping her in whatever way I could so that she could succeed. And she has done incredibly well over the years, and she's brilliant.
That's wonderful. So building that team was definitely one of the pieces of the puzzle in building such a successful business throughout the years. When you first started, did you have a vision that it was going to grow this big? Because sometimes some people are like, no, I want to stay small. I want to grow, obviously make a certain amount of money or whatever, but I don't want to have to handle a team. And I think all of that is based on personality types and what the family dynamics and all of that.
Sure.
Did you have that as a vision for yourself, or did that kind of start happening?
I didn't have that vision. My vision, when I was doing this, I said to my accountant at the time, if I can't build a business based on kindness, then I'll go back to being a freelance writer. Because I felt like I had had jobs where I didn't feel like I or other employees were treated very kindly. And I just thought that was unnecessary. So I said that it was an intention. And in my experience, when you put an intention out there, it tends to actualize as long as it's an intention. But then I put my head down and was working so hard, I wasn't thinking about kindness, but that is actually a core of who I am. That's something I've always said. I'm the same whether I'm talking to a CEO or the person who's cleaning the office. That is an important true north for me.
Oh, yeah.
So then as the business was growing and I started seeing it grow, and I was like, wow, this is very interesting. This has become a core of our business. And then when we worked together, probably, gosh, I don't know how many years ago now, to come up with our values we are empowered, curious, kind, and fun. And those are all that people live out. And then our mission, which was came up with by that first employee, is building relationships one word at a time. So that is really the core of our organization. And we discovered that when we were working with a consultant probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And the first thing that she and her partner did was survey everybody and say, what is the core of your business, the thing without which you would not exist? And it came up that it was our culture. And I remember at the time thinking, that's interesting, because most people would probably think that's not revenue generating. But in my experience, which is the thing I'm writing the book about, is that it is absolutely revenue generating. And that it's, as a business owner, you obviously look at your balance sheet and your financials. That's very important. But if you only look at your financial balance sheet, you're missing a whole lot that's over on your cultural balance sheet. Because, for example, turnover, as you probably know, doesn't show up as a line item on a balance sheet, but that is extremely costly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to say that over the years that I've been doing this, I think I can count on less than one hand the number of people who have left the organization. And that is incredibly valuable because there's institutional knowledge, there's commitment, there's just a whole lot that goes into that contributes then to the bottom line in myriad ways.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great reminder for everyone listening. Obviously, we need to keep track of our numbers, but having that foundation of what are the values, and I love what you said, what is something that I can't do business without, that the business would not exist without, and having kindness as one of them is very important. So I love that. Tell us more about the book that you're in the process of writing. I'm curious to know more.
It came about as I was having a conversation with some other business owners, and they were friends of mine, and they still are. And I've been saying, you probably should write a book. And I was kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to write a book on. And we were talking, and I said, it's interesting because other business owners, I'm in a group called Entrepreneurs Organization, which for anyone who has a business and is looking for a group of like-minded individuals, definitely check it out. It's in, I think, 100 and some odd countries, and it's international. It's a wonderful organization. Anyway, I'm part of EO, and part of that, you have a forum. And so these people in forum become very close to you. And I was talking to them, and I said, several of them had successful exits. They talk a lot about EBITDA and all of that. And I said, I don't really look at my business through that lens. Obviously, you spend EBITDA, that's important, but I don't pay attention to it. I said, it's almost like I look at my business through a cultural balance sheet. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to write a book about your cultural balance sheet. And then the subtitle is Strategies for Creating an Environment Where People Can Thrive. Wow. And so then I went to experience share of the things that we do, that we have done, that have been developed over the past 19, 20 years. And things that have actually definitely driven profits to the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that is so interesting. I'm very interested in reading the book because it's based on what you were just saying, focusing on the culture, focusing on the values, which is a side that sometimes we don't prioritize. And like you said, it's very important and leads to profits, to bigger numbers too. So that's super cool. I'm also curious about the rebrand because I love WriterGirl name. Can you share a little bit more about how that came about and what's the vision behind that?
Yeah, we started as WriterGirl. And when I was out selling our services to people, I had to always say, it's not me. There's a whole group of people smarter and better than me behind me. And so that was fine. But then probably about, let me think about this, maybe 10 years ago, we informally surveyed our clients and said, should we change the name? Because we felt like it made us sound small. Mm-hmm. And many of our clients said, we do agree that it doesn't necessarily capture all that you offer, but everybody knows it. And so it's got a lot of leverage. It's snappy. People remember it. So we don't think you should change it. So we left it. Fast forward to, I don't know, a couple years ago. And as we're hiring more younger people, which is wonderful, different ideas, lots more energy, all that stuff. And a couple of them were like, we have to change the name. And I thought, I get it. I understand why they would think that. And so we were thinking about, how do we hold on to this brand that we've built that is so well known? We're definitely the gold standard in the industry. Everybody knows us, and you don't just toss that away. We thought about it for a while, and all of a sudden we were in a leadership meeting. And I was online, I was like looking up different things, and I was like, what do you guys think about WG content? And they were like, oh, and everybody liked it. I'm like, bought it So I bought the URL.
Oh.
We decided to change it. And then we worked together with coming up with the strategy and creation to capture more of what we do. And we held on to the WG because a lot of people refer to us as WG.
Yeah.
And so we held on to that. And we also held on to the same color palette. So it's not a shocking big difference like, wait, who are you? We are moving into this. And I'm really excited about it because we're going to be going to our conferences starting in the spring and we'll be announcing it. And then one of the reasons so that we did it, other than we've been thinking about it for a while, several of our clients, our larger clients, when we meet with the CMOs or the CEOs of these very large hospital organizations, when they hear what we provide, they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And they also are like, I didn't know you had that many people or that many resources. And we realized that the name, in many ways, while it had served us incredibly well, at the same time might be holding us back because people thought of us as much smaller than we actually are.
That's powerful. And also the idea of, as you're rebranding, you get to relaunch in some aspects and present yourself, introduce yourself again, and have your current clients be more aware of the amazingness of what you have to offer. That's so exciting.
Yes.
Cool. I'm excited for you guys. That's fun. Something else I've been curious about as you're sharing this, because we talked about prioritizing the culture over, or bringing it to the forefront, not just focusing on the numbers. What are some of the other mistakes or maybe some things that get overlooked as people start building their business? And with your vast experience and tenure as an entrepreneur, you can shed some light on there and help us with.
I have a couple of things that really I hang on to and that have really stuck out to me over the years. Probably about 12 years ago, I had a coach, and WriterGirl was, let me think about what year that would have been. We were over $1 million in revenue at that time. But I was still working very much in the business and still worried about payroll and things like that. And this coach said to me, WriterGirl is you and you are WriterGirl, and it won't grow until you do. And I was like, oh. And I've shared that with many other entrepreneurs, particularly women entrepreneurs, which I love to share information with. Because what I did then is, we've all read business books, but I did not spend a lot of time on that. I spent time on more personal development and some spiritual books. I started meditating and all of those kinds of things and really focused on that. And that was when WriterGirl really took off at that time, because I started focusing on my own personal development and self-awareness. And as anyone who has any employees or is working on a business, one of the best things you can do is develop your own self-awareness for so many reasons. Everybody probably knows that. But what we use and what I was introduced to about 12 years ago was the Enneagram, which some people are familiar with. It looks like you are, Marta, but just in a nutshell for your listeners, it's a personality profiling system. There are many of them out there. But what I find helpful about the Enneagram, as opposed to DISC or Myers-Briggs or many of the others, is that it's all about motivation as opposed to behavior. There are 9 types of the Enneagram, and several of them, the behavior can look similar, but the motivation for that behavior is very different. And by understanding, first of all, learning about my own motivation and the own high and lows of my own behavior, I could, first of all, have self-awareness. And then learning about other types, it helped me develop empathy. And it made our communication more effective. And so we do that with our team. Anyone who is hired is typed in the Enneagram. We do lunch and learn workshops. Every occasion we'll do a full day workshop so that other people on the team know somebody else is this type, and maybe that's why they're behaving this way. It helps you get a little out of yourself instead of constantly thinking about yourself. You're thinking about, oh, this person, they're a very black and white thinker. That might be why they're saying this. There's not a lot of nuance for them. So I have to understand that. And that has been really a huge game changer. Learning about the Enneagram changed the way I parent. It definitely affected my organization in a very positive way. And it also changed every relationship that I have just because of having that understanding. So that's a big learning. In terms of a mistake that I share frequently is I did not study business in school. A long time ago, I was a French major, no business at all. French major, yep. As I was building the business, I had an accountant, and we were on what's called a cash basis. I didn't have the language of business. So I didn't really understand the difference between cash and accrual, which, okay, I didn't understand it. Unfortunately, fast forward, what my business is we collect a lot of cash up front and then we work it off. When I got divorced, all of that cash, I was paying taxes on all of that cash, and then it works itself out. It's too complicated to talk about. But in any case, my tax return looked like I had a lot more money than I actually did because I owed so much of that. It was actually a debit on a balance sheet in an accrual basis, but it looked like that. And I paid spousal support for 4 years based on that. That was both a personal and professional lesson to understand the language of business and understand what is the best way for you to be recording your books and your earnings.
That's very encouraging because lots of women that start businesses come from different backgrounds and don't know the language of business, and more proof that you can learn.
Yes,
to have a degree, right, or an MBA to be successful. You just have to educate yourself. And I love the piece about personal development and self-awareness. I am a huge proponent of the Enneagram. That was a huge tool for me as well when I got started, and understanding why I had such a drive to start the business when people
Are you a 3?
did not. I am a 3. Are you too?
No, I'm a 7.
Oh, okay.
But when I was building the business, I looked much more like a 3 because I had to. So I looked very goal-oriented and very concerned about achieving and all of those things. But the reason I do that as a 7 is because I need everything to be okay. Whereas 3s are more concerned about winning, looking good, getting things done. It's a very different motivation, even though that's a perfect example of the behavior looking similar, but the motivations are drastically different.
Definitely. So what would you say is the type that you resonate with the most in terms of that you get along with the most as being a 7? Or do you attract a certain type in your company, or it's a mix?
I think we have every type except 8. I don't think we have an 8. Now, we have all women too, which your audience probably likes. It is a woman-owned and women organization. Now, we have upwards of 100 contractors that we work with across the country, and there are men in that group.
Right.
But the employees, and there are 30 of us, are all women. And there's a certain kind of yin energy there with that. So it's a little bit different. But I have female friends that are 8s. That's not necessarily, men aren't only 8s, women are 8s too. I have a lot of friends that are 8s, but I don't think we have any 8s. I find personally my partner is a 9, and they are so easy to get along with, especially for my type is the type that can be, I process really quickly and I can be impetuous. And a 9 is much more stable. They're sort of like a tree. They're like grounded, which they can also be stubborn, but they're grounded and they think more slowly. And that is very helpful to me. That's a yin yang thing. So that's really great. But my COO, who also happens to be like one of my dearest friends, she's a very highly evolved 2 on the Enneagram. And the 2 is someone who can be considered on the low side of people pleaser. And they can do that for various reasons, usually pride. She's done so much work on herself that she is a very highly evolved 2. And I'm telling you, if you want someone to have your back, whenever I travel, I'm either with her or my partner 9, and I don't even know where I parked my car. But they always know because I'm always busy running to the next thing, and they're like taking care of me. And that, boy, I'm very appreciative of that.
I resonate with that. My husband is a 1, but I suspect he has a wing 2. On the sense of, you were talking about the pride and putting people's needs before his own, which is so the opposite of me.
Yeah.
So I love that. I could be talking about the Enneagram forever. So I'm sad that you only touched on that towards the end of our time
I could
together.
talk about it forever too, you know.
It's a gift that keeps on giving for sure. I love it. Before we wrap up, I would love to ask you my $1 million question here on the show, which is, Christy, what is an empowered woman?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I never think about that. I mean, I think that, as I mentioned to you, one of our values is empower. We are empowered, curious, fun. And I will say that one of the things that we do to live out those values is we don't ask someone, how have you been empowered? We say, how have you demonstrated empowerment? Because that's asking the question, phrasing it properly means all of a sudden they're like, oh, what have I done that demonstrates empowerment? Which I love, because then people are seeking opportunities to be empowered. Like, okay, I'm having a challenging situation with a client. I know I'm empowered to solve this within the confines of my job. I am also empowered to set boundaries and say, no, I don't work on the weekends. I'm sorry, we're not available for that, whatever that happens to be. I think an empowered woman is someone who sits in her own power. That sounds kind of weird, but I guess over time, I wish that if I could go back to when I was doing this, I would really pay attention to the self-talk that was not very positive. And I'm sure your listeners can resonate with that I'm sure that most of them have heard this, that you would never speak to anyone the way that you speak to yourself. And so I would say that an empowered woman is someone who's kinder, to herself, as kind as she is to other people, and also recognizes her own worth. I've had situations where I've almost not dismissed, but like I've made a man uncomfortable because of my financial accomplishments. And I remember saying to someone once, I said, you don't have the right to shut me down about that, because there isn't a man on this planet who would feel bad about talking about taking care of his children or being able to do something because of his financial achievements. So that's something that I've become more aware of as I've gotten older. Just really appreciating that, and don't limit what you think you can do. We still live in a world, and I will firmly say this until things start changing. We live in a country that is less racist than misogynistic, and that is saying something because both are a problem. But we're an incredibly misogynistic country. And as a result, and sadly, it's still one of the best places to be a woman. So let's be clear. I recognize that too. But that we need to collectively work. That's why I like to work with women businesses. And that's why I am so open with sharing the myriad mistakes I've made, because I want them to go break it in a brand new way and do it better. You know, that saying that like, I see further because I stand on the shoulders of giants. I want people to stand on my shoulders and go do it bigger and better, because we need to have an impact in this world. And we need to have the energy of relationship and empathy and vulnerability and nurturing. Really, we are hungry for this. And largely, not that men don't do that, many men do that, but women, it's our natural state. And I think that the more we can own businesses and put that out there in the world, the better it is for everybody, not just women. It's better for men too.
Yeah. Oh, I love that answer so much. I love it. So good. So much wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, your nuggets of wisdom, but also your story and your experiences. So tell us more how we can find out more about WG content and connect with you. Where can we find it?
I am on LinkedIn, Christy Pretzinger, but you can also, it's really easy to find me just by going to wgcontent.com. There's information on the whole company. There's a founder's video there. I just did a new one because we just rebranded. And there's all sorts of information, and you can reach me through that as well.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for your time. This was fun.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode empowered you. And if you enjoyed the show, please join the Empowered Woman community on Facebook and share with friends, or leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover this empowering message. Until next time, bye.